Good afternoon. Welcome to our Business Agility video podcast. Each week we spend 30 minutes exploring business technology topics for small business owners in Canada. So our topic today is creating winning customer experiences starts with data. So our panelists today are Samantha DeForge, myself, Marie QUIBELL, and we are highlighted today by our guest panelist, Terrence Boland. So Terrence is a VP Finance at STRAIT Group Ltd. So our discussion will feature his experiences mostly and examples regarding real-time data and data collection, data analytics, and really how that drives better business decisions. So he'll share some insights into how they have not just even survived as a company, but actually flourished and expanded in Alberta in 2020. So those are some great stories that we're going to want to turn it over to Terence and really dive into how they've not just, they've really expanded their business with a couple of corporate acquisitions even. So our format, as always, is interactive. We invite questions from our webinar attendees as well as our Facebook live stream. So we'll start, as far as the agenda goes, we'll start with panelist introductions, and then we'll get right into our topic. So with that, I'll introduce myself. I'm Murray QUIBELL. I'm the president of Accurus Solutions. I have a passion for data and analytics, so this is right up my alley. I'm always excited to share stories and examples like we have today. So I'll turn it over to Terrence as far as interest goes. Maybe Terrence, just talk a little bit about yourself and some of the projects you've done and some of the stuff that you're going to get into today, and then we'll go over to Samantha.
Yeah, you bet. My name's Terrence Boland. I'm a chartered accountant by trade. Been in this industry for, I guess, as far as the field service construction side of things, for about 15 years. Yeah, same thing as you, Murray. Real passion, I guess, for analytics, business process improvement, and that sort of thing. Our first field data capture system was way back when my daughter was born 15 years ago or whatever, and guys were plugging into phone jacks in the hotel rooms and electronically submitting field tickets. So it's been a fantastic journey, I guess. So that's really been a big part of it. For the past 6 years, I've been with what is now STRAIT Group. So we're a pipeline facility construction company up in Fort St. John in Grand Prairie area. We've had a couple acquisitions, like you said, over the last year. So we've grown pretty rapidly over the last 4 years. So it's been a great opportunity for us to really fine tune our processes, and it's kind of a continuous cycle. So no, it's been fun.
And I am Samantha NITON-DEFORGE, and I work with Accurus as the business solutions specialist. And I'm really excited to have Terrence here today because he has a really completely different perspective on sort of technology, and like he said, using even 15 years ago plugging into phone jacks. But with technology being revolutionized on a day-to-day basis and constantly changing, and particularly with the energy sector in oil and gas, and even here in Calgary, right? This hits close to home for a lot of us. And I think the first place that, we want to start with is that, sort of archaic mindset that tends to run across this industry, right? It's not everybody, but a lot of the businesses, we've always done it this way. There's nothing wrong. They have redundant processes, things like that. So Terrence, what are your thoughts on this sort of mindset in the energy services sector or oil and gas overall?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's I guess it's been, we've been in a good cycle, I guess, for a lot of years in Alberta in the oil and gas cycle. So, I mean, everyone was really too busy to be looking at some of the things that make their business a little bit better on the back end side. So you end up kind of just continuing to band-aid things across just to get things through the finish line and get invoice and get cash collected and that sort of thing. How that's changed, obviously, as everyone knows over the last handful of years, is, I mean, that's got a lot tighter. And it's really just kind of starting at that point and looking at where your touch points are. It's looking at your business and maybe looking at a little bit different viewpoint, seeing where those points are, seeing what data makes sense, what do you need real time, and starting to maximize that. A lot of us are in the same boat where, I mean, we've got to be cash conscious and cost conscious. We can only charge out so much, so you got to be just a little bit more efficient on some of your processes. And unfortunately, I mean, there's a lot of individuals that really want to hold on to some of those traditional kind of mindsets, and I think that's going to be a challenge for them going forward, because it's not just process improvement piece, but it ends up being customers like seeing the reports, they like seeing that information. It's a lot of things that spin out of that data that can be useful. So
And I think that's where we want to come back to today, right? Is like when we look at technology or the use of technology innovation, it's all it is really capturing the data in a location and then really capitalizing off that data at the same time. So I think, with that being our focus today, when we talk about the efficient use of data in a company, particularly in this industry, what have you seen at Straight be the benefit of doing it this way and being so optimized in your processes and operating really lean overall?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, there's the tangible pieces that you kind of go through, and you're like, with less touch points and that sort of thing. You've got less staff that are data entry, brute force their way through the data and invoicing and that sort of thing. So that gets reduced. So obviously that's a good piece of it. The leakage of field tickets and information that then rolls right into your revenue streams. And then the tangible piece of just tightening that working capital cycle from the point of time when you've got someone doing work in the field to actually invoicing and collecting that cash. Anytime you can reduce that, so those are some tangible pieces you can definitely put your fingers on. But where we've seen this roll into and where it's been a great advantage for us getting in front of customers is on the sales side. The data that we've got on a real-time basis to have in front of our customers to say, this is what's happening on a project. This is the things that we're running into. This is really your project, Mr. Customer. I mean, it's been a great advantage to us. And the part of that too is them really knowing what's happening on their project. And then if there's any changes, out of scope work, change orders and that sort of thing, we're really on top of that. I think that really resonates with anyone that's listening to this, that's been part of a project type business, that trying to sit in front of a customer 2 or 3 months down the road with a bunch of paper field tickets and trying to understand where the scope creep happened and looking at some change orders or what you can justify as far as some extra costs and that sort of thing is a really hard discussion. But if you're doing that on real time, your inspector is there, your customer knows what's going on, they know that there's it's whether it's weather or different delays in the project and that sort of thing. It's a very meaningful conversation during at real time, rather than trying to do that way down the road and you've got POs are closed and all kinds of different hurdles that you're trying to jump over. So that's really where we're striving to have our information there, and the customers are really loving that information at their fingertips, I guess, as far as our projects go. And like I said, I'm focusing a little bit on the financial stuff, but this goes from everything from, again, in our business, the HSE stats, NCRs, quality, just utilization of equipment, understanding, resource allocations and that sort of thing has been a huge advantage for us, and having that visibility for our customers.
Well, it comes always back to that proactive versus reactive mentality, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. And you use the data to really just, you capitalize off it. You send your customers the updates and things like that. Murray, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that I love the examples there of Terrence about just talking to customers in real time about the data, and really, again, that's when you have the ability to make a decision on it. So if the customer doesn't like what you're doing really the day before or the week before, then you can immediately pivot and start to deliver differently or more effectively, whatever. So that's obviously critical. I don't know if you have any stats on that, and put you on the spot around that in terms of is there even with the customer satisfaction or increased project revenues or profitability, is there any kind of stats like that you might be able to share to say these are things that we can track, that we've been able to improve every month or so on? Is there anything like that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, there is certain things, and I mean, it's there's obviously a number of variables, but I mean, things that we definitely track is that, like I said, that tightening that working capital. So from the day that we've got our work staff leaving site or leaving that project to the time that those field tickets can be invoiced and then cash collected is a big number. And I mean, every day that reduces is a big part of that. So I mean, we've reduced that by, again, there's a lot of factors there, but I mean, close to a month in a lot of instances with some of those projects, and those are big dollars. I mean, we're a very cyclical business, where, I mean, our spring and fall is pretty slow. Our winter is kind of full out. So you're ramping up really hard. We're going from, 30 to 50 employees to like 600 literally overnight. And so, I mean, it's a real big strain on working capital. So as much as you can tighten that turn obviously the better for a lot of different reasons. Equipment utilization is a massive one for us that we always track and keep an eye on. So anyone that's in the heavy equipment business like we are, keeping that utilization as tight as possible, understanding where not only your internal equipment but your rented equipment, and knowing where that's at, what the utilization is, and then getting that equipment back as soon as possible. So maximizing your resources all over the place. Again, just kind of little numbers that are a big issue there. And I guess our biggest tracking item that we have on a weekly basis for internally and externally is just our budget to actuals. Way that we put together our projects is on a, each one of our pipeline projects is what we call as a work breakdown structure, and it's all the tasks that we have to execute that project. So each one of those work breakdown structures have, the resources, human and equipment, and third-party resources required, and we're tracking that on a day-to-day basis as those tickets are coming in, so we can see exactly how many hours at D6 compared to what we thought it was going to be on there, or how many welders, or whatever. So again, it's to your point there exactly, Murray, like you're knowing when things are kind of going off cycle. So if you know that you're about 50% done that particular task, how does that compare to your budget on an actual kind of resource standpoint? So you can, make some adjustments if you have to. You can talk to the customer, you can talk to your superintendents out there, so you can kind of know what's going on in a project, and it's not, you don't need all of those resources sitting out in the field in a pickup truck watching what's going on. You can manage it from a couple different locations. So it's a huge piece for us in real time on that project. And then kind of afterwards, when we're estimating, you can pull that real data out of there and go, what's the real cost on a cost per mandate, cost per, whatever, for whatever 10 and 6-inch line or whatever in a certain area. We can pull that data and go, this is real data. Every estimator has their metrics and that sort of thing that they've used and understanding, but it's good to kind of reference back real jobs that we executed and go, yeah, you know what, we can litmus test this estimate based on what we've actually done. So it's some pretty cool data once you get going.
I know that, and Sam, you can probably share some stories, but what we find almost all the time is we even talked about estimators or people creating budget to actuals, and what do most companies use? Well, they use Excel, and every estimator has their own Excel sheet, probably somewhere. But I don't know, Sam, you can share a couple of stories around, just examples that we're seeing out there in the market. It sounds like Terrence and their company is light years ahead of what we typically see. Eh?
Well, I would say, yeah. I mean, I love always meeting with Terrence, because I think, it's always been, like I always say, Terrence just have such an open perspective on using technology. And as far as him being in a VP of finance role, just look and think back to how many operational things he just mentioned as far as an accounting perspective go, right? Because typically when we work with people in finance, again, not everyone, but most, they're focused on charts of accounts, subledgers, and things like that. Of course, it's important, but I think it comes back to the operational aspect driving the accounting. And that's sort of where you run into those Excel integrations, so to speak, whether it's an actual program that's importing information, having actual people doing it too, that's a different aspect. But I think it really comes down to, the Excel can track the data, but it's not ever going to be accurate. It's always, there's going to be a high probability of risks associated with errors, corruption of files, the development behind that Excel sheet. That's a really, really painful task, and asking a lot of someone to do that. Imagine if you had to sit and work in an Excel sheet all day. It'd be scraping a cheese grater against your forehead for 8 hours a day. I don't know how people do it, but at the same time, it's not real-time information. Sure, you can set up, Windows Server loads and things like that, but it's never going to be fully real-time. And when we talk about operational aspects of operational businesses, operations needs to drive the accounting. Everything from starting in the field, selling the job, starting in the field, capturing real-time information, whether it's field tickets, like Terrence mentioned, tracking equipment, utilization of equipment, machines, and in addition to that, additional asset management like depreciation runs or payment plans if you're still paying something out. Having all that centralized in one location allows someone in a business to really just have that 360-degree view, providing the ability to provide reporting to not only your customers, but for your own internal purposes as well. Because when you see something that's going to redline, or even before it's redlining, we never want projects to redline, but you have that view of that about to happen before it happens. And so does a customer if you give them that information.
I think that, yeah, having the data stored consistently and in a database is that's always the critical thing. I know a lot of data and analytics type of projects, they get tripped up in being able to compile the data or making sure that it's accurate and that it's clean and things like that. Maybe Terrence, just talk a little bit about how, obviously before you can do analytics around it, before you can, get those days out of accounts receivable outstanding or utilization rates, before you can run the reports like that and provide those real-time, basis for decisions, obviously capturing the data real time and making sure that it's, consistent and in a database format is the place to start. But maybe just share a couple of how you've been able to do that without getting too technical, of course, but just some fundamentals about where to start in a kind of a data analytics project.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I want to touch on too, I guess, and Samantha made a good point that I want to highlight there is, I've been really fortunate in my career to work with, on the operations side, guys that really embrace this, right? Unfortunately, in some instances, quote unquote, IT falls under the finance group. So, this isn't a function of doing accounts payable. This is a function of operational data. So, it's really got to be driven out of operations and embraced by operations. And you need that, that, call it hammer in the room or whatever, where your president or VP of ops or whatever is standing beside you, ensuring that, the importance of this is translated to everyone throughout the field. Those are the guys that you're leaning on, after a long day. They've got a 10, 12, 14, 16-hour day, and then you're asking them to, put all your data into whatever system that you have. So, you really need to have that locked in arms, I guess, as far as that goes. So, like I said, I've been really fortunate to work with the guys that I've had that have kind of helped me out getting this going. So,
well, there is no accounting without operations.
Yeah, 100%. Everything just kind of comes in, on the backside as far as accounting goes. So it's kind of a mapping exercise. It's really getting that data consistently in the field. So, anyways, kind of done my rant there, or not my rant, but my praise of, I guess, of the ops guys I've worked with. They've been great. So, but yeah, like as far as the data goes, and that's the thing, like we talk about consistency and stuff, and what we've really done, and you got to make sure that you manage is, what we call, I guess, your work types, equipment types, and that sort of thing. So standard naming conventions and that sort of thing is a critical kind of piece. So we kind of work it from our rate sheet, or I always have in my past. So if we charge out a guy and it's called a welder, that welder is how you hire everyone. It's how you kind of recognize that person when you're bidding and all of that kind of stuff. So you can't really get that analytics without having that common naming conventions across all of your resources and your resources, your equipment, and your men out in the field. So that's a key part of that. And it just kind of keeping that consistency, and then having your kind of master data points managed internally by the right people, I guess. And again, and it's not, you've got an accounting list and you've got an ops list and you've got an insurance list and et cetera, for all your equipment. There's one centralized list, and it's all, this piece of equipment falls into this category that's by this group. So it just kind of lines that out. So it's a key component to that. And, I kind of talk about starting this process many years ago. And the technology now has got like exponentially better. The products that are out there is very similar to, what you'd have on an iPhone or whatever, where everyone's used to that. So it's lots of swipes, big buttons, and that sort of thing. So it's really come a long way. It's so much better than, like I said, dialing up on through a phone line or whatever. Yeah. So it's been great to be able to kind of see that evolve. The training is that much better. It's clean, crisp. And you've got tools out there like a BI, tools that are really starting to kind of get a lot of traction over the last year here that are awesome. You don't need a developer in-house to be building reports and that sort of thing, leaning on some guy that you've got a programming background. You can basically almost teach yourself on YouTube, kind of how to build these reports and have them useful for the guys. It's super interesting to grab all this data from the field, but if it's just sitting there in a kind of a vortex and nobody's looking at it, then what's the point, right? So you make sure you grab that pertinent data that you have, put it in a usable format for guys via dashboards or whatever, and you can really run with it. So there's some great tools now. It's fantastic actually to see how it's all evolved. So
and it's funny. I saw a company the other day, and basically I feel like sometimes companies they want to start backwards almost, right? So they don't have everything centralized in one location. They do a boardroom meeting. There's 8 different data sets coming into that meeting from everyone in the different, roles. Operations got one set of data, accounting's got another, the C-suite team has another, everyone's got mishmash of data. But do you find that a lot of people or, go into, we need to leverage BI, we need reporting, we need analytics, and just sort of try to visualize a tool like, let's say, Power BI or Tableau, whatever you might be using, to just pull the information from their Excel sheets, their other systems, their Frankenstein systems, so to speak, right? Everything that's running together that's somewhat connected, and then pulling it from all of those systems and trying to do that. Do you see people do that, like, given your experience, or just band-aiding analytics?
Yeah, well-led question. Well-led question. It is, yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing. And I mean, I think there's a few places that get kind of hung up on, some best in class or whatever you want to call it systems, but it's when you don't have that consistency across all of your systems. So it's, you got, and it's everything from, have to manually enter Terrence into 3 different systems, right? So you're pulling, my operational data out of one, my HSE data out of another, and, some other information out of another one, and you're trying to put these all together, and it's really, you're working off 3 different data points. And so you've got this inconsistency of data between them. And it's not an easy exercise to consolidate all that, because I really don't find that there's a lot of systems that can do everything that you want to do. But to manage that master data, I think, is a real key component in kind of having consistent data and useful data. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like band-aiding all these things and throwing them into CSVs and then doing a sort and then throwing it into another sheet and that sort of thing. It seems like you're just continuing, like you said, putting band-aids on top of things where you got to pick some systems, run with it. And I think there's people out there, and I mean, and all of us have done it, where you get really sentimental about some old systems or whatever, or building it yourself, where, I hate to say it, but I mean, business processes aren't generally that unique. So a lot of systems that you can pull off the shelf and utilize their system and process that's been tested by numerous companies. There's, it's any system that's been around for a while, like they've went through the strains of this. So it's a way better exercise to maybe look at the system that comes off the shelf and the way that they do purchase orders, for example. Let's do it that way, rather than saying that we have to have this special purchase order kind of process that really, I don't know, grabs the specific information of our super specific pipeline construction business. Well, I mean, it's purchasing, right? So, and it's just kind of opening your mind a little bit to that. And then by doing that, you're minimizing your systems and minimizing some of the data points that have to go back and forth. So
those integrations, so to speak.
Before we run out of time, we've got about 7 minutes left here. I want a couple of things for you, Terrence. One thing, I want you to talk about the competitive advantage that you might say. So when you're doing a proposal and you're bidding on a project, so spend a bit of time talking about the competitive advantage that you might be able to allow you to win a new project or gain a new customer that the data is helping you. So that's one thing. And then the next one, I want you to talk about a message for for 2021. We're almost getting into that. A message for the new year as we come out of 2020. We'll put that in our rearview mirror and then talk about how anytime soon. Yeah, talk about how you've been not just resilient, but some examples. But go back to my first question: how the competitive advantage that's created when you're talking to a new company or bidding on a new job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we work for major oil and gas companies, no different than a lot of service companies out there. And I mean, the dashboards, the reporting and all of that, I mean, is a key component to winning those bids. So again, you can put together a bid and you can say, yeah, we're going to create all these reports, and you can make them in some kind of format and put them into your bid package. But where I think we've kind of leapt ahead a little bit as far as some of our competition goes is we have those reports and that information kind of at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. So it's not a whole pile of brute force to be getting that information. Yep. We've got it there, and we've got it accessible to our customers, and you've got a number of different stakeholders within your customers. So you've got obviously your operations team, your HSC, QC, First Nations groups, and so you have all of these things. So it gives that reporting and that visibility on that project. It's right there at your fingertips. So that's been a real advantage for us when we're putting these bids together. You know, very on a high level, I mean, we have the same equipment, we have the same guys, we have the same kind of competencies and that sort of thing, but it's really having that ability to provide that info has been a big advantage for us on winning some projects. So.
Well, no doubt, if you can give your customers an exact real-time aspect of the project at any given point, well, why wouldn't they, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, without having a lot of brute force to do that, it's a pretty key point. So.
Yeah, I like that. You're right. There is an option. Brute force is one. You can get data analytics by hiring a whack of people and just keying data in. You can do that. So that is option number 2. So talk about how you've been successful. Your company has been successful in 2020 in Alberta, and you've made a couple of acquisitions. And then talk a little bit about looking forward and really what's been able to. How you've been able to do that in a time that other companies are really having trouble.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been fortunate through the last few years where, I mean, it's been a little bit slower. We operate in an area that still has stayed relatively active in that kind of Fort St. John, Grand Prairie area. But we've grown a fair amount. I mean, we've kind of went from 0 and start of 17 to kind of a state now where, I mean, during the winter we'll have 500-600 guys out in the field. Yeah. And then start of and we've primarily done pipeline construction, all greenfield construction, and we acquired a company in the spring that does more maintenance turnaround type work. So it kind of takes the lumpiness out of our business. So they are busier in the spring and the fall. So we've been able to integrate those guys into our business and business processes pretty easily. There's always kind of understanding on both sides of the fence how things work, but it's, you know, again, it's that collaboration. We've been able to integrate them pretty quickly. And then in the fall here, we've acquired another company that has worked primarily in the the Grand Prairie area. That again, they do some more facility construction, some fabrication, and that sort of thing in Grand Prairie. That again, they slightly different businesses, but a lot of the business processes are the same. So we can utilize that. We're kind of in the process now of integrating them, and we should have that up and running by kind of January 1. And then expanding our pipeline division into Grand Prairie. So getting that up and running and some people. So I guess with our processes and systems that we have in place, it's not only kind of enabled us to win some work, but it's enabled us to grow pretty quickly, I guess, without having a whole lot of hiccups and dropping the ball on too many things. So it's kind of that scalability, I guess, is been good. And because of our business, the way that it kind of ebbs and flows as far as our business goes, you can kind of ratchet it up and down relatively easily without, like I said, kind of hiring and firing a whole mass amount of people. So gives you that nimbleness, I guess, that I think is key right now. So
yeah, no doubt. Well, I know we have 2 minutes left here, Murray. I don't know if you want to start your closing thoughts here, and then we'll wrap up.
I might. My closing thought would be, what's your message for 2021? If in 30 seconds or less, in terms of, well, you know, what would, if a company is thinking, geez, you know, I love this data stuff and I love what Terrence says, but how should I get started? And is it something I should be investing in?
So.
Oh no.
Did you just go silent on us, Terrence?
I think he did. He went silent on us. Oh, apparently nobody wants to hear what he's saying.
I think you got to mute. You somehow muted yourself.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Oh, sorry, guys. I had a phone ringing on the other side. Sorry. So back to do I still have 30 seconds?
Yes. Yes.
So my 30-second pitch, I mean, there's never a good time, but I think companies have to look at it. They have to invest in it. And they've got to fully kind of embrace it and put some resources, some good operational resources towards it, and working with a group like you guys as well too, where you can kind of bring that technology, bring the operations in, and really start working through it. It's a task that you have to invest in, but the reward is you know, exponential. The ROI, I mean, is through the roof if you just do some quick math, if that's what you need to kind of justify it. It's a great thing to invest into and key in, you know, kind of looking at the marketplace the way it is right now. So my
thought, and I'll turn it over to you in a second, my thought would be that you start somewhere, right? And then it can't just be a point in time thing. You don't just drop in a piece of software or a hardware device and then say press a button and it's magically going to be good. It is a process of continuous improvement, meaning that once you get something in there, what more can we do with it, and how can we tweak some things and even get it a little bit better each and every day? But that's always my thought. Sam, why don't you close her out?
I'm gonna piggyback off of Terrence because you know how much I think about this all the time. Definitely have operations involved. Especially when you're working in oil and gas, most of the companies, whether you're service or project related, this is a requires a strong operational presence. So always keep them heavily involved. Make sure that your projects happen, but your operations are involved. The accounting will come. There's no fret around that. But that would definitely be what I would emphasize on. But we are at 2:30, so it is time to sign off of our session here today. So thank you for joining us on our webinar or our Facebook Live, which we have had several views on today. So be sure to join us next time, and we'll be in touch until then. Thanks.
Good deal. Thanks, guys.